Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Future You webinar run by Prospects. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to be focusing on apprenticeships in this webinar. So I'm going to be your host, Emily Slade. I'm the host of the Future You podcast that is run by Prospects. And this afternoon, our panel are going to answer some prepared questions all around apprenticeships. So we will have time at the end for an open Q&A. So if you do think of any questions throughout the session, please do pop them in the Q&A box and we will address them at the end. But to begin with, let's meet our panel. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, Erin.
Yeah, hi everyone, nice to meet you. I'm Erin. I work at Forvis Mazars and I'm our talent attraction manager. So I'm here today to talk about all things early careers applications, how to find them, top tips, etc. And really excited to share that with you.
Brilliant. Owen?
Yeah, I've just finished a degree apprenticeship at Prospects doing digital marketing. So that started in 2021 and it's just finished this summer. So transitioned into a full-time role now.
Perfect. Matthew?
Yeah, hi everyone, thanks for joining. I currently work for Gleeds. Don't let the purple Heathrow lanyard fool you. That's just the project I'm currently working on at the moment. I'm an apprentice quantity surveyor and currently a current apprentice in year 2 out of 5 of my 5-year degree apprenticeship course.
Amazing. And we had originally planned to have Scott, who was the graduate apprenticeship delivery manager at Edinburgh Napier University, but unfortunately he's had to pull out due to personal reasons. We are thrilled instead to be joined by his colleague, Joe.
Hi, yeah. So my name is Jo Noble and I work at Edinburgh Napier University. I work as part of the team that do graduate apprenticeships, which are similar to degree apprenticeships down in England, but obviously it's a Scottish version of that. We're a small team, so I work quite closely with Scott. I have been given the questions ahead, so I kind of know the answers, hopefully, to the questions that will come at us today.
Perfect. You'll be absolutely fine. So without further ado, let's dive into those questions. So to begin with, Owen, we're going to start with you. Why did you choose the degree apprenticeship route over university?
Yeah, I think I initially started from a funding perspective. So just like the idea of like the student debt and just like the whole financing of relocation. So it wasn't really an option for me. And then someone let me know about degree apprenticeships. And then I heard that the company that you do it through pay for your degree and then you also earn a salary as well. And that sounded like a lot more appealing to me. So I restarted looking at going on a degree apprenticeship route over university and it more suited what I wanted to do. So it completely changed my mind on going from not thinking I'd ever have a degree to now having just got my degree.
Yeah, brilliant. And Matthew, same question.
What was the question again? Sorry.
Sorry, so why did you choose the degree apprenticeship over university?
Yeah, so for me it was similar to Owen, a bit of a no-brainer. I always knew that university wasn't sort of a route for me that I wanted to follow. Never was really interested in the whole that whole side of it. So yep, apprenticeship, similar sort of reasons. Combining a salary with on-the-job learning. I knew it'd be quite demanding as well, and a bit of a challenge. And I think, so as someone that quite likes a challenge, and yeah, there was a bit of a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, of course. And did you find out like Owen through a sort of friend or was it introduced to you through a system?
Yeah, it was sort of not pushed as much as university was when I was in high school and A levels. So it was kind of a route I discovered on my own, and then just through time spent on looking on various different websites and researching. This isn't my first apprenticeship. This is my second apprenticeship. So yeah, I knew sort of an apprenticeship route was something that I definitely wanted to do and found out on my own, really.
Yeah, brilliant. So we'll move over now to Erin. How can aspiring apprentices make their applications stand out?
I love this question because I think in the generation of AI, it's so easy to pop it into ChatGPT and ask it to do whatever you want it to do and scrape that information. But I think where applicants stand out is that motivation piece and bringing your authentic self to that application. AI can do so much, but actually, what is it about that place that motivates you? What is it about the program? Because as Matthew said, it's not an easy route. It is challenging. So is it that challenge that you love? What is it about that company? So I always say when people are looking at Forvis Mazars, like, don't just read our website, have a look at our Instagram, have a look at our LinkedIn. What is it that motivates you? When I was looking at Forvis Mazars, I like the fact that they had charity outreach. When I speak to some of our school leavers, they are like, you work with such iconic clients. It's really cool. I wanted to do that. Others talk about the support and development, and it's figuring out what makes it a special thing for you and what makes you passionate about it. And then that comes through really authentically and it shows in such a great way. So I think the biggest thing is when I say research, I don't mean just read their website. Think about why it's unique to you. And then the only other thing I say as well is think about your skills and think about what you do and don't enjoy. And everyone instantly thinks, oh, okay, so I need to think about jobs I've had. But it's not that. When you're at college, when you're at school, what is it you enjoy doing? If you're on a sports team or you volunteer in your community, why do you enjoy what you enjoy? Like, simple things like I love reading. Why do I like reading? Oh, I like the fact that I can use my imagination. So therefore, in my job, I'm looking for those sort of things. So think about those skills and then try and find the jobs that link to that. And don't assume it all has to be work-based experience. You can get experience and you can think about your motivations and your skills from so much that you do.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So, Joe, same question. How can aspiring apprentices make their applications stand out?
That segues in quite nice there, Erin, because work-based learning is obviously a key element to any apprenticeship that you do, but people forget that there are soft skills that come into that. So it's about making those soft skills stand out, as Erin says, believing in those kind of personal enjoyments that you have out in life. Do try and feed into that work-based learning, do things that are going to interest you, show that you've got an interest in those areas of study. Going in with just a sort of basic, oh, I'm interested in this role, it's not really going to cut it in that market. You need to show them that, well, why do you want to do it? Well, I've done this, I'm interested in this. You've got to show that you've got a knowledge of the field that you want to kind of go into with the soft skills and work-based learning, but also some of the technical skills if you can bring it in. So I think that definitely would make your application stand out, is showing an interest in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. And the best thing about that is that it's easy because you just have to think, who am I and what do I enjoy? Easy peasy. So, Owen, if we'd like to start with you for the next one, when would you say is the best time to apply for an apprenticeship?
Um, I'd say it does depend case to case, but I'd say I found for the types of degree apprenticeships I was looking at, it was around springtime with like a start maybe in summer and then lining up with the degree starting in September. But from my personal experience, it was just checking every day, to be honest. It was checking year round with certain peaks, like I said, around the springtime, etc., where line up with an early start, and by the time the degree starts, and then if you're not doing a degree one, you might have more flexibility with like college courses starting, and there's usually two key start dates, which is January and September. So just keep those 2 months in your mind, I'd say.
Yeah, Matthew, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, mirroring kind of what Owen said. Again, varies like from personal experience. I got my apprenticeship on quite short notice, which in turn made the sort of enroll into the university a bit of a stressful period. However, as someone that I was in my previous apprenticeship and I knew it wasn't for me and I wanted to move, so you start checking. I was around the January time, and as soon as I saw ones come up on the day, you sort of have what you need. You have your CV ready, be prepared, send your CV in. Earlier in the process, I'd say the better almost. If you see it's the apprenticeship release date has just come out, then put your CV in, get in that person's brain, get in the employer's brain nice and early. You become memorable in that sense, and yeah, yeah. So again, it varies, but as soon as you can, really.
Yeah, that's a great point. Joe, are there any differences between England and Scotland in that respect from when the best time to apply is?
I think the main thing to take away is people are recruiting all year round. Yeah, there are peak times within those recruitment cycles. So we would always kind of recommend, employers tend to sort of advertise roles between January and August. that takes us right up to the start date. So it does vary massively. Like Owen and Matthew have said, it's about checking in regular on these apprenticeship websites and stuff, because you never know when a job's just going to appear. One thing that we do at the university is offer a future talent hub. So if they're interested, they register a QR code with us. If we know an employer is about to advertise, we will share that potential role with students. That's not to say that other universities, colleges, workplaces offer the same thing. So start familiarising yourself with places that do offer apprenticeships, because they might have these talent banks where they can kind of flag these job opportunities. In Scotland, the website's apprenticeship.scot. So we always say get registered with that as soon as you can, and make sure that you're checking that on a regular basis. A job could be there one day and gone 3 days later. You know, you have to be on it all the time. It's about showing that commitment. But generally January to August. But I would never be disheartened if you haven't secured something by spring, because we do recruit right up to the bitter end. Employers are quite slow sometimes when it comes to the HR processes, so you've got to take that into consideration. So it's all year round.
Fantastic. And Erin, anything else to add?
Yeah, so Forvis, Mazars and some similar employers do start at the start of the academic year. So we're actually already open for quite a lot of our school leaver apprenticeships, and we opened a week ago. We've already closed some. We'll open more as the year goes on. So it is on that rolling basis. And I loved what Joe said about like those talent communities. A lot of employers have them, but you end up signing up to so many that sometimes it can be really hard. So I think with universities, it's such a great way to do. With like employers, my top tip is to follow them on LinkedIn, because they're announcing when those jobs are going live. So it means that you're actually passively finding it rather than having your emails filled by, 10 different employers. Focus on using the universities with that, because they cover such a wide breadth, and then use LinkedIn for the employers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Erin, we're going to stay with you for what are some common misconceptions about apprenticeships that you'd like to challenge?
I think one of the big ones is, oh, it's really easy to get an apprenticeship. It's absolutely not. It's a really hard route, and it's a really rewarding route. So I always encourage people, don't be put off that it's hard, but don't think it's an easy route. I think a lot of people think, oh, it's not as good as going to university, or it's not the same. It's absolutely not the case. And I use some of our school leaver apprentices at Forvis Mazars who, by the time their peers who are graduates are joining our workforce, they're already 3 years into their 4-year qualification. So by the time someone is 1 year with us after graduating, that person is already a qualified accountant or auditor. So it's a great way to fast track the career. And the other one is, oh, it's quite lonely. And a lot of different places start in big cohorts. So we had 400 people start ours in September, and they all started together at Warwick. So you build that network and those connections that way. And I think people often worry about like the social side and things like that. But like so many places have really great social lives. We have societies where it's sports and different things, and you start together as part of a cohort. So it's not necessarily, oh, if I do university, I miss out on this route, or oh, this is the easier route. It's a challenging one, but a really rewarding one, and a great way to fast track your career.
Yeah, brilliant. That's such a good way of putting it. Joe, some common misconceptions that you'd like to challenge?
I guess one of the biggest misconceptions is that you're doing the sort of basic roles within the offices, like making the tea, all that kind of stuff. And that's not the case at all. You know, quite often employers do hit the ground running with you. Particularly in one of our courses, in the first week of teaching, they have to do a group presentation. I mean, come on, that's like you're getting thrown in the deep end. So I think the misconception of it, like you say, it being an easy route in, it's not that at all. You have got a lot to juggle. You're not just learning the academic side of things. You're having to learn a new role. You're having to learn how to network with new people, and support one another. And then the more competent you become while you're doing your apprenticeship, the more responsibilities you're going to get as well. So it doesn't get easier. It just gets more challenging. But I think that the way the world is going is people love that challenge now, because there's the element of learning that academic side, but also having that really practical hands-on experience. And then when you're getting to the end of your apprenticeship, you're a ready-made worker. You're not having to go into that graduate sort of pool of people trying to fight for the same jobs, because you've already got the job, and you likely would have already got a promotion during your time. That does happen with some of our GA students.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And then, Owen, I suppose from this point of view, was there anything that you were expecting that didn't happen or did happen in terms of misconceptions when you did your apprenticeship?
I guess kind of like Joe was saying, about maybe getting like your hand held and stuff along those lines. And like I'd say in a positive point of view, what really wasn't like that for me. So like you become obviously mine was 4 years, so sort of 18 months in, you're now just a member of staff. Like people even forgot I was an apprentice. Which is like there's a good feeling, obviously. That's what you want. You want to get to the point where you're a trusted member of staff. And sort of by my third, fourth year, I was taking on projects by myself, doing stuff that people have never done in the company. So I'd say if you're scared of like just having people hold your hand and always being seen as junior, I wouldn't say that's the case because if you take aside the fact of you're going to university and doing the qualification, in work you're just a full-time 9 to 5, so you're just another member of staff, so you can offer just as much as a senior member of staff could.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. So we'll start with Joe. For what advice would you give to those considering or applying for an apprenticeship?
Oh, that's a tough one because it really does depend on your journey, your own personal journey on advice. But I think just being confident in what you want, what route you want to go down, I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice. You know, don't be frightened to approach companies. You know, quite often you've got to remember apprenticeships, degree apprenticeships, graduate apprenticeships are relatively new when it comes to the university studying element. Some employers still don't even know that these are options within their companies. When you look at sort of industries, people are retiring now. We need the younger generations to come in. So have confidence in putting yourself out there. Approach companies and say, listen, do you know that this could be a thing? You know, that could be, they don't have to be advertising on apprenticeship.scot. So I think it's just having confidence in what you want to do. And if you're not particularly sure on what route you want to go down, start exploring these things. Like Erin mentioned earlier, you know, start researching companies, start researching areas of interest, and just see if there is a field of study that links with that field of interest you have. So I think that's probably my best piece of advice is just be confident in your abilities and just fight for it and go for it.
Brilliant. Matthew, what advice would you give?
I think a few of the main ones I'd say is like sort of be prepared to work hard. It isn't easy, but there's a reason it's not easy. It should be hard and it should be challenging, but you'll come out at the end of your 3, 4, 5 year course and you'll think, I'm so glad I put everything into that because now I'm reaping the rewards. Now I've got a degree, 5 years of experience, and X, Y, Z different achievements across the way. So yeah, I'd say that, and I'd also say utilize your strengths. I know we mentioned sort of touched on this before, but utilize what you're good at, and also utilize what you're good at whilst almost looking to always improve on what you're not so good at. And yeah, my last thing I'd say is sort of do it in something you're passionate about. So, for example, for me, I knew I was passionate about the construction industry, and from that, I sort of looked into roles in the construction industry, saw quantity surveying, looked at my strengths and thought, oh, I've got this strength, this strength, this strength, but QSs need these strengths. So, for example, Excel. I did an Excel course before joining my company, just a little example, and that helped me massively when I joined. And yeah, just do it in something you're passionate about.
Yeah, brilliant. Erin, what advice would you add?
I think it's about being yourself and thinking about what you enjoy and what you love and knowing that it's okay to make mistakes and to go into something focusing on the skills. What skills, like Matthew said, do you want to develop? And knowing that, you know, these days people have different careers. It's about how you can develop those skills and what skills do you enjoy doing because you're going to be doing this job day in, day out. So it's not about the job title, it's not about the area, it is about the skills that you are going to be using on a day-to-day basis. If you are someone like for me, if I was in a job where I was sat at a computer all day and I wasn't interacting with people, I would be so drained and it would make my job so much harder. Like what I love about my job is that I get to talk to people constantly. That's where I get my energy. So I know that when I'm looking at jobs, I'm not looking at the job title, I'm not looking at the area, I'm looking at what brings me passion, what brings me excitement, and where can I still grow and stretch. And I think it is being yourself and thinking about what makes you want to get up in the morning to go to work because especially now it's October, it's dark in the morning, it's rainy, it's cold, all the things I love, but getting up in the morning to do that, what is going to get you jumping out of bed wanting to do that? And I think that's the key thing.
Yeah, definitely. And Owen, any advice to add?
Yeah, I'd say along the lines of like the job title, etc. I'd say I agree because I'd say When I was applying for mine, I was obviously a lot younger, so you don't understand that sometimes 10 employers could have a different name for the same job. So if you get obsessed with this one job title, which I was, you realize you need to sort of broaden your scope a bit because if you actually go in the nitty-gritty, look at what you're doing day to day, look at is that course going to get you what you want? So don't just look at the name of the degree or HND or HNC, whatever qualification level it is. Look at what skills you actually get. Is that going to help your career? Because oftentimes, like I said, there's new job titles being made every week, but they essentially mean the same day-to-day tasks. So I'd say just be quite open to it and like be open to explore. Maybe there might be 10 elements of the job you really like and two you're scared of or unsure about, but you might actually end up liking those parts more than the other parts.
Yeah, brilliant. Matthew, we're going to start with you. Where did you look for opportunities? And you've briefly touched on it, but do you want to go more into how did you find your apprenticeship?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll start with sort of a non-cliche answer here. So I think it's been mentioned a few times where people have reached out direct to the workplace. I've done that for a few companies. But yeah, so that is definitely a route I'd suggest because you might message 10 companies and one replies, and one, they might not give you a job, but they might give you advice on sort of what to do. These are the people that have been in the industry for years and years. These early careers teams know what they're doing. So they can give you good advice. And then sort of just your traditional route. So you've got UCAS, that was the one I probably used the most. That was one pushed by my school. You've got Indeed, LinkedIn, also Prospects, which I'm sure a few people on the call will be familiar with. So yeah, big shout out to them. Not that I got my apprenticeship through them, but it was definitely a useful tool, and the apprenticeships they offer on there are with some quite good employers. So I definitely suggest looking on there.
Yeah, brilliant. And Owen, where did you look for opportunities?
Um, I'd say it ranged and literally I was making an account on like every website I could. Just as initial start, I didn't know which would be the best, so I made account on prospects, the government website, Indeed. But I did tend to lean back to the government website just because it was updated so fast. So I got mine through the government website. And it's just getting to know like the websites and how they work when they're updated. So like I said, I had multiple accounts and I was just going back and forward between them all. But then I'd say uh, sort of like an alternative method is if you have friends in SMEs, company, like large companies, just ask them to ask their manager, do they know of companies where apprenticeships are going? I think sometimes you do have to think quite creative, go outside the box. So it might not be going up to an employer with a CV on a piece of paper, but message someone high up at a company on LinkedIn. I think you do have to be quite creative nowadays. So I think a combination of all those, I'd say.
Perfect. So, is there an age limit on apprenticeships? Erin, we're going to start with you.
So no, there isn't. There are always changes in funding, different things, but no, you're never too old or too young to start learning. The key thing is looking at what the qualification requirements are. So, for example, if you start with Forvis Mazars, if you started working towards your accountancy qualification, you're not eligible. But if you haven't, absolutely. So we actually have someone in our team who started their career as a volleyball player, doing that professionally, and at the age of 27 or 28, had an injury, couldn't, and started training through our own apprenticeship as an accountant. So that you really can develop it at any age. It's not limited. You do need to check with different employers what they're looking for in terms of education requirements or things like that. But no, absolutely not.
Perfect. Owen, age limits?
Well, in my uni class, there's people of all ages. It's because there was quite a lot of senior people that also decided they want to sort of go back and get qualifications that they missed out on, whether that was they got a degree in an unrelated field and now they want a degree in a related field. So yeah, there was a 40 plus year age gap in people in my degree. So yeah, no age limit.
Yeah, brilliant. And Joe, anything to add on age limits?
I would just agree with both Erin and Owen. No, there's no maximum age limit. In Scotland, you have to be minimum of 16. At the university, we do work with directly from school, so school leavers, but we also look at students who are reskilling. So they might have worked in a different industry altogether until they reached their 50s and thought, well, do you know what? I'm going to change. So absolutely not. And I think there's a great benefit to that as well, because they can learn so much from one another, particularly as well. What you find is a lot of people work in industry and maybe just don't have that qualification yet, so they're going to do it through the official route to get that degree, and yeah, they can teach a lot of our school leavers a lot of things as well. So no, it's great that there's such an array of ages.
Yeah, fantastic. It's very comforting as well, I think, to know that it's never too late and you can always pursue something different and there's always support there for you to do that. Joe, we're going to stay with you for how much are apprentices paid? So just an idea of the salary bracket, that sort of thing.
Well, they're not allowed to be paid anything less than national minimum wage, as we all know. That's a requirement. And it really does depend on the organisations themselves, really. I mean, I think someone mentioned like there's small SMEs, but there's also larger sort of real estate companies, It really depends on the organisation. I think because you are going through an apprenticeship, there might be agreements throughout your contract that when you get to a certain point in your apprenticeship, that you get this a pay increase, for example. I know that GA students go for promotions quite often, which obviously then comes with that pay increase. So in terms of obviously standard, I think if you want an idea of what apprenticeships are offered up here, is to have a look at the apprenticeship.scot website. You'll get an idea based on what's advertised on there and what they're kind of offered. I mean, quite often when I go out to schools, I joke with students that some of these GA students in the third and fourth year are earning more money than me in my role because of the responsibilities that they have. So you can't really answer that with a definitive answer, but it's definitely national minimum wage, and who knows, the world's your oyster.
Absolutely. And Owen, as someone that's gone through it, anything to add on apprenticeship pay?
Yeah, I'd say obviously apprenticeships range sector to sector, so it's such a wide range. But I'd say I did quite a lot of like in research before I got mine. So there's so many government PDFs, and you can find official charts of different, whether it's a degree, a higher, a level 3 or 4 apprenticeship, and you can find brackets. And then, like Joe said, a lot of companies have schemes in place where it changes every year, and it's all aligned with the economy, and there's so many elements that go into it. But yeah, there's quite a lot of brackets and banding out there that you can find information on.
Yeah, perfect. Owen, we're going to stay with you. How did you balance work responsibilities with academic commitments?
I'd say with like hard boundaries. So it's quite scary early on to like set hard boundaries with your own employer, so your managers and your team. But I'd say it's simple things like using your calendar to your best of your ability, having set days that you do your coursework on. So my uni work was always on Friday, and that stuck for 4 years straight. That way, the company adapt, they get used to it, whether it's senior or people in your team, and it's not a surprise and it's not a shock. And then same with the days that I'd actually have to go on campus, they were all set in advance, 6 months in advance in my calendar, so anyone could check. And then also goes the other way about sometimes it's about being flexible, so using your personal time sometimes to do work to do with your course rather than in work time. It's just employers are taking on you as an apprentice, so they are quite aware and they will be more flexible than you maybe think going into it. So you don't need to be scared to ask for more time because it all comes back to your job in the end.
Yeah, of course. I'm a huge fan of calendar blocking. Personally, it's my favorite thing to do. Matthew, anything to add on how did you balance work responsibilities and academic commitments?
Yeah, sort of like an infamous question that you ask apprentices now. So without copying everything Owen said, one thing that he didn't touch on was I'd say you sort of utilize the benefits that your employer provides you. So for me, I get a set amount of study days, and around exam period time. So my exam period times are December and March and April time. You need them because you're working on projects. For me, for example, I'm working on projects throughout the week. So utilize them benefits that they provide you, and yeah, just time manage your skills. Don't let yourself get too stressed out of it. It's so easy to work all day and then think, right, I'm just going to jump straight on my uni coursework or my college coursework. But you do need a life at the end of the day. These apprenticeships aren't here to take your life away from you. They're here to sort of help you and provide you with a better future. So yeah, just utilize time management skills and speak to your line manager, speak to your employer, say, look, I can't commit to both of these today. Where can we meet in the middle? And often if your employer's good, which most are, they'll reason with you and you'll come to some sort of arrangement.
Yeah, brilliant. So, Erin, back to you. What qualities or behaviours make an apprentice stand out in the workplace?
I think it is that openness to learning to feedback, to wanting to grow and taking ownership of their own growth and development. The silliest question you can ask is the one you don't ask. So taking that, confidence to be like, I'm going to ask this question, putting themselves outside of their comfort zone, whether that's through networking, putting themselves forward to do something, or getting involved in something that wouldn't normally be something they do. I think that's the big thing is building those relationships, building those networks so that you can thrive. So yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Matthew, what qualities or behaviours would you say make an apprentice stand out in the workplace?
Yeah, I really like this question because sort of you hear about how do you get these apprenticeships, but then what do you actually do when you're in them in your first month? How can I make myself stand out? So I was sort of one of one apprentices when I first joined my company in my sector, so it was fairly daunting and didn't really have anyone to lean on. So the ones I've sort of learned of myself, the key one for me is be proactive. You're new to a company, you're new to a job role, you're completely brand new. So as Erin said, ask the questions. Ask, can I go to this place today? Can I go to this networking event? Oh, I've heard about this. Please can I attend it? And you're in early careers. These are all opportunities to learn. Everything you don't take is a missed opportunity at learning. Be curious. Use your initiative. Sort of demonstrate a good work ethic. You don't. You should be grateful to be in the position that you're in. So don't waste the time. Use every single hour of the day. And some sort of base ones I'd say is punctuality and being presentable and body language. Some if you go down to sort of really like minimal, your body language. If you sat in a meeting, it can be quite. You've been sat in school the past 8 years. You're used to just sort of sitting back, not really. They're like sort of disengaging with what's going on, but no, you're in the workplace now. It's a little bit more serious. So yeah, look like you're interested, even if you're not.
That's very good advice. Yeah, fake it till you make it.
Mhm.
So we do have one more pre-planned question that's going to be directed at Owen, and then we will move into our live Q&A portion of the webinar. So we've had some questions come through, but if you are mulling questions over, you've got something that you want to ask one of our panelists, do pop your questions in the Q&A box and we'll be able to get to them in a second. But before we do, Owen, what's the one thing that you wish you'd known before starting your apprenticeship journey?
Um, I'd say it's quite a complex answer, but I'd say from a degree apprenticeship point of view, and I guess the same applies to any apprenticeship level, it's not a shortcut necessarily. It's not a cheat code. It, it's not sort of just this magical thing that's just it'll do itself. So like obviously my course was 4 years and you like it does fly by and it doesn't. So it's like you do have to be aware of that and like obviously it's amazing the fact that I was learning on the job, getting the degree paid for and then getting a salary. But I think it was like Matthew was saying before, it doesn't come easy every day. Like there is expectations of you. You're functioning a role that the company needed. So I'd say it's definitely a big undertaking, any level of apprenticeship, and it's definitely not something to be undermined. They're tough roles, no matter what level of apprenticeship it is. So I'd say think about which one you're applying for. Think about, like I said before, about the job titles, and just make sure that the day-to-day role that you'll be doing is something you'll liking the look of. Yeah, and just like I said, it's not some sort of cheat code and shortcut.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for that. We are now going to move into our live Q&A portion. So if you want to answer a question, just unmute yourself and jump in. So we've had a question from a Scottish parent and the lack of apprenticeships listed on apprenticeships.scot. What other sources are good or when are peak times to see vacancies?
So that will be me. I think it was kind of touched on before. Some of the jobs on apprenticeship Scott will come and go. It's about making sure that you're checking in on that regularly. Just because you check today doesn't mean there will be none tomorrow. I think the main sort of time frame is that January, August window, keeping engaged with that all the time. There are other avenues, like people have mentioned, LinkedIn, Indeed, all these S2 jobs, all these different sort of job sites, going to company websites themselves as well. They might be sort of advertising apprenticeships within that. I think just treat it as though it is just a normal job application. Wherever you would look for a job, you can look for a graduate apprenticeship. And I think that's the key thing there. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost a full-time job, isn't it, in itself, looking for a job. So yeah, just keeping almost set a timer perhaps every day to remind yourself to check in on all the different websites.
Yeah. And you can set up notifications as well. If you've got interest in certain areas, get these websites to ping you when there's a job goes live. Might not be anything that you're interested in, but get used to doing that. You'll get better at sort of creating these filters, so then you're filtering out all the unnecessary sort of roles. So yeah, just treat it as you would any other role, really.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Owen, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it is literally about being so like the notifications. It's sometimes just about being relentless. Because I remember when I was looking, there was times where there's only 1 to 10 vacancies, and then just out of nowhere, the weekend had gone by and it'd been the Monday, and 50 got uploaded. It sounds insane, but that those times did happen to me, and I think there was a time, like probably 6 months before I got mine, where if I was on my phone, I was looking at apprenticeships. It gets to that level, and I think these are so competitive roles, like you have to be on that level. You have to be checking it on LinkedIn, on your emails, all notifications. I think, yeah, it is tough, but I think you just have to think of every channel possible to look for them.
Yeah, yeah, and there's so many these days. Brilliant, thank you. So, would you suggest narrowing down your choices and then just apply to, say, your top five first? Because each application can, as we know, take a lot of time and effort.
I don't mind answering that one if that's all right.
Yeah.
I think obviously it depends on the time that you can give yourself to do it. But honestly, to give you a straight answer, I'd say no, because for every one that you don't apply for or potentially push back, that's an opportunity that you might have missed, or a, a gateway in your life that you potentially shut without even giving it a chance. Obviously, you can have your preferences, you can have the ones that you put a bit more attention into. Obviously, you're going to see employees, you're going to see salaries, you're going to see courses, you're going to think that's what I want 100%. But if you put all your eggs in them baskets, what are you going to be left with when sort of May, June, July comes round? And although, as we mentioned on this call, it's never too late to get an apprenticeship. And me personally, I can tell you off experience, I got accepted onto my current apprenticeship in August. So you can imagine how sort of scary that time was. But I'd say no. I'd say if you can give yourself the time, apply to as much as possible, and yeah, try that.
Yeah, brilliant. Joe, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to add to what Matthew say, I think the more applications you do, the more interviews you get invited to, the more assessment groups you get, the more experience you're getting out of those. So the more you apply for, it gives you that confidence going through that process. It then becomes second nature, writing cover letters, putting together CVs to relate to the job roles and stuff. So I think it is just about being slugging away and just kind of keep going with it.
Yeah. Erin, I'll let you finish sneezing. Did you want to add to that?
Thank you. Yeah, very badly timed sneeze. I would agree completely with what the others said, because you don't know when an application is going to close as well. So you could choose your top five, but actually, if you're not successful, you've then missed opportunities that have already closed. However, the flip side of that is where I think people sometimes fall victim to is, I'm going to do applications to everything, and therefore I'm going to go quite generic. I'm going to use AI and I'm not going to edit it, or I'm just going to copy and paste the same thing in, even though I've not really thought it through. And then you're going to have to apply for more and you're going to have spent too much time. So it's finding that balance for you of what, like Matthew said, what is manageable, but also making sure that you're still submitting those quality applications. Because if you apply for more, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it unless you're putting in that quality application that stands you out and does show that passion, that research, etc. So it is a really tough balancing act. But if you only pick five and then you don't get those, number six is already gone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough balancing act, but again, I think it's again about checking in with yourself. What can you manage? What can you do? And as Joe pointed out, you will get better. You will get quicker at doing this the more that you do. So it can be overwhelming, I think, but it does seem to be worth it. So we have a question here about CVs. Do you recommend 2 pages or 1 pages? The forever question. Yes, Joe.
We debate about this at uni all the time. So I'm in agreement that, I mean, the maturer you become and the more experiences that you have in relation to your role really determines what you put on paper. I think as someone who has been on the side of reading CVs, you don't want it to be a laborious task. You need to get a snapshot about it. But there are times where I think that there's too many rules on how many pages should your CV be. It really depends on the line spacing. It depends on the font size that you use. So like that's going to make it bigger. You know, I don't think that there should be a right or wrong answer than that. I think it needs to be clear and concise and understandable and eligible and relevant to the roles. But I think, I mean, we're not talking we want 5-6 pages of your experiences, of course not. But I definitely think that this 2-3 page rule, it shouldn't be a thing in my opinion.
Yeah, of course. If you've been in the workforce for 30 odd years, you're going to have more experience. If enough of it's relevant to fill 2 pages, you could justify 2 pages. If it's not, don't space everything out just to cover 2 pages, just to say that you've got a 2-page CV. So again, variable. Thank you. So does work experience matter? Oh, Owen, yes.
But yeah, I was just gonna say that I know that when I was applying for the apprenticeship that I've just done here at Prospects, I'd say I changed role just before it specifically to tailor my skill set more to this apprenticeship, and I'd say that got me this apprenticeship in hand. And although at the time it wasn't like linking back to the job title thing, if you looked at the job titles, you wouldn't think they were the same job. In actuality, my skills I was actually getting were a much easier version of what I needed. So they
Mhm.
directly led to that. And at the time, people might have been thinking, oh, like, why are you doing that job if you wanted to get an apprenticeship in this role? But the skills were actually building me. So some of them are just soft skills like communication, getting used to writing corporate emails, getting used to, in that role, I was like handling phone calls quite a lot. So speaking like a professional level with suppliers, which they're all soft skills that translated to my role now. So they did help from as a young age point of view where those skills might be lacking.
Yeah, Erin.
I was just going to add to that experience is very hard to get. And if places are looking for experience, how do you get that experience when that's what they're looking for? So I'm a very big fan of looking at your, like I was talking about, those softer skills and looking about the free resources. So for example, we have an online work experience that's open to everyone that they can do at their own pace. There's so many different things like that. So work experience doesn't always have to be a formal job because it can be really hard to get and almost that kind of catch-22 piece. So look at where you can get that experience in different ways. It doesn't always have to be through a job. Great if you can, but not always the case.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not necessarily work experience that's going to matter. It's just building up those skill sets however you can. And that can be literally through hobbies and outside things. Joe, did you want to add to that?
I was literally just about to say that if somebody's talking about leadership skills and you've been the captain of your hockey team at school, that's obviously leadership, okay? If you've done something like debate teams and that's you've been able to do sort of public speaking and things like that, so you're able to present. So it's about being clever about the when they use keywords within job specs, try and incorporate that within your CVs and your cover letters, because you're really translating exactly what they want onto the paper and showing them exactly what you're able to bring to the company.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Matthew.
Thought I might as well make it a full house of answers for this, and give sort of a real life example. So, me personally, I never did. Obviously, I've got prior work experience, but I never did like a work experience placement with any company. But as someone now that sort of when work experience people come in now, and sort of I'm part of the coordination team to coordinate the weeks and what their week look like. And I can tell you now, we just had a lad that's did 6-week work experience placement, and on the back of that, he's basically been informally offered sort of a contract for next September as a graduate, and that's like sort of guaranteed to him. So there is a real life example. Like if you go in and impress a workplace, they're going to see you as sort of an asset that could be used in the future. And yeah, why not? Yeah, there's a real life example for everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Perfect. So, ooh, this one's long. Hang on. Are employers focused on the subjects you've taken at A level? Can it be a problem when taking a wide variety of A levels? So the examples we've got here is sociology, photography, geography, and film studies. So would employers focus in on the A levels that you've taken, and can it be a problem if they're all a bit, I suppose, yeah, big wide variety? Joe.
I'm going to jump in on this one because obviously I deal with the university, which looks at computing programs, construction programs, engineering programs. I think that when you're looking at a degree, a graduate apprenticeship, we do have standard university entry requirements, i.e., I can't relate what the English one is, but it's 4 higher Bs, for example. Now, in some cases, such as engineering, you have to have an understanding of maths. It's a very key part of that. So there are certain things that are going to have to be a requirement. However, if you're not coming straight from school, does it really matter what you did 10 years ago and got your hire? Not really. But if you've been working in the industry, then we will look at that work experience. So I think the main thing about graduate apprenticeships is there are routes into it no matter what your background is. It's like you don't always have to have done outstandingly at school and got 4 A's in maths, English, history, all that. It's the standard entry requirement, and then there'll be key things that might be important, such as maths in certain programs and things.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so if you are coming straight out of college into a graduate apprenticeship, as long as you've ticked the boxes of if your degree, if the thing you're going into demands specific subjects such as maths and science, I would assume that there's a way to find that out ahead of applying for it. Because what if you, I suppose, just to jump on this question, just thinking if you haven't had any external experience and you are just coming from your A levels and you have chosen a wide variety, because of course you chose them at a time when you probably didn't know what you wanted to do, and then you wanted to go into, say, an engineering apprenticeship degree, would having taken film studies, which is an iconic A level and everyone should take it, would that put a damper on your potential to then pursue that, I suppose?
Not necessarily. I think that when you're thinking about entry requirements, look at the prospectus. That's where your first point of contact would be, looking to see what those hires are. Is it 4 Bs, and do they actually identify specific subjects such as math? If they do and you're lacking that, then that might create a hurdle for you. But what we would do in those cases, just because you don't have maths, does that mean that you shouldn't have the opportunity to do civil engineering? Not necessarily. What we would then do is recommend, why don't you do an evening class or go to college and do a sort of part-time program there where you're building up on those math skills? So there'll be ways that you can kind of get into it. It might not go into the traditional process, but you can look at other ways. But I think in general, it is just standard 4 hires at B level. And I think some employers might be more particular. So, for example, in our architectural programs, they have to have a really understanding of the computer-aided drafting. So there's elements of that. So I think each employer will have the different requirements, but in terms of entry, it's kind of standard. And then we'll look at work experience if you're obviously not been in school for a while, etc.
Yeah, of course. Perfect. Thank you. Erin, anything to add to that?
Just to add, for Forvis Mazars, we don't look at subjects specifically. We look at kind of your results, but also the skills that you gained there, because we have people who are training to be accountants and auditors who've studied biomed and have studied psychology, because it's the skills, different service lines. So whether it's that attention to detail, whether it's that loving getting stuck into a problem and finding solutions. So we very much focus on the skills, and like Joe said, it'll be different for different ones, but actually having that breadth can be a really good thing, and something we really value at Forvis Mazars anyway.
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely. Okay. What are employers looking for during the application process for an apprenticeship?
So I can take that one. I keep saying it, I'm banging on all the time, but it is the skills. We are looking for those skills and those values. So when I say skills, I don't mean, oh, you know what, that they're already a qualified accountant or they have that passion for accountancy. It is the planning and organizing, the resilience, the ability to communicate really well, and speak passionately about what they do. So I think those are the key things that really help with that application, is showing those skills that are going to show how you thrive, because apprenticeships, as we've talked about, they're not the easiest route. They are for people who want to challenge themselves, want to get stuck in. That's what we're assessing people for. We know they're not going to have necessarily years of experience, so we assess for the skills that we know will lead to success.
Perfect. Owen.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I actually had during my application processes for apprenticeship, I actually had some employers that asked to do a specific task related to that job you do. So I'd say one thing I did is I took those tasks as serious as I could, even if it's even if it's doing a presentation or creating like a portfolio of work, etc. I just say like it's no good if you had an amazing interview, an amazing application, but then like you rush the task just because you think maybe you've got the job, because usually you might be very close. But yeah, I'd say I took those tasks very serious, whether it's a presentation, etc. But yeah, sometimes employers, I found when I was applying, they do just throw these random things, sometimes like the tasks and a sort of an activity. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Joe.
Be prepared to attend assessment centres as well. Quite often employers will want to host an assessment centre. They don't want to just base applications on CVs and an initial interview. They want to see how they interact with other people. They want to see how they engage in tasks like what Owen was talking about. They might be bizarre tasks that have nothing to do with your subject, but it's about thinking outside the box, and being prepared to sort of throw yourself into the deep end. You're always being watched at assessment centres. If you're not engaging in group conversations, then is that going to make you stand out? Probably not.
That's a good point. Matthew.
Yeah, taking it away from sort of all the technical skills that you can demonstrate and all the sort of intellectual skills you can demonstrate, I'd say a key one that's not been brought up is I think they're looking for a bit of personality as well, sort of like what makes you you, and sort of yeah, so what makes you stand out, and why are you perfect for this role that they've got? They're looking for that extra bit of, oh, this person's got three A stars, that's brilliant, but do they have the personality? Could they fit into our workplace culture that we've got? You know, that is important in a lot of companies now. So you can be perfect for the role, but in the interview you didn't come across as someone that would fit into the project team that you're working on. So yeah, just be ready to demonstrate your personality, and don't be scared to show it. You know, like you are you, and you got to this point because of who you are. So yeah, just show it even more in the assessment centers.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think the interview process can be so overwhelming and intimidating, but it's always a good idea to just take a breath, remember who you are, as you say perfectly, don't be afraid to showcase that. And fundamentally, if you might not get a job because, or an apprenticeship because you weren't going to be a good fit with that cultural company, that's equally, that's also a win because clearly they didn't think you were going to fit, and that's not the end of the world. Erin.
I would also say with the interview process, the thing that I love to remind students is it is a two-way process. In the same way that employers are looking if you are the right person for that role, you're looking if this is the right environment for you. And keeping that in mind is so important, because this is going to be where you're going to spend so much of your time. You're assessing them as much as they're assessing you. And I think that helps give you a little bit of confidence as well, of like, this is a two-way conversation. It is not just I'm auditioning for you, they're auditioning for you as well.
Absolutely. And it can feel stressful and you could feel like, oh, I've got to get a job, but it's better to get the right job than just any old job, usually. Joe, were you going to say the same thing?
Sorry, yeah, I was kind of going to just reiterate that. And I think going back to the assessment centres as well, is remember not to overperform. There are other people that are in that assessment centre as well. It's about showing the teamwork. It's not always about your voice being heard. It's about you giving the opportunity to others in the room. And that's going to make you stand out to employers if you're actually able to control that. So you don't want to underperform, but you definitely don't want to overperform where you're hogging all the limelight, because it doesn't look very well.
That's a good point. Matthew.
Yeah, sorry, not to drag this question on anymore, but Joe just made a good point there about, people see like the skill of leadership is so important, and that means I need to be the loudest voice in the room, or I need to be, the person that speaks the most, and they need to hear me. I am great for this job. You pick me. But sometimes what can speak louder than words is sort of your ability to listen and take in. If you're in your assessment center and you're doing a presentation or you're doing a group activity, how can you take leadership of that whilst also hearing out everyone in the room's opinions? Because that, at the end of the day, is what makes a good leader. Not leaders aren't one person, they're a team. There's always a team behind a good leader. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, perfect. So we're heading into our final question now. We are going to wrap up in about 5 minutes' time. Panelists, are you happy to be contacted after this if people do have more questions that they couldn't quite get out today? We could pop your details in the email that we send out at the end, which will include the recording of today's webinar, which you can share with family and friends and watch over and over again. So if you do have any other questions, you can send them across to us, events@jisc.ac.uk, and we can get those answered as best we can for you. So the final question for our Q&A is, if an employer says that they only accept apprentices that work in their company, what does that mean? Is that something that people have come across? Does that make sense?
I think I might jump in on this one. What that could potentially mean is that they quite often and companies will use apprenticeships to upskill current employees. So rather than using apprenticeships to bring in new employees to the industry, what they're looking at is the current staff. They might have people in there that don't have degrees, particularly when you look at things like business management and stuff. There might be people working in HR that don't have any of that. So they might use apprenticeships to boost that sort of qualification. That's kind of what I'm picking up from that question, is that, and to me, that's what an employer would mean if they were talking about they're only taking, it would be just looking at upskilling what they already have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that does sound quite frustrating, but okay, so it's just usually more of an internal role that they're advertising outwards.
I could be wrong, but that's kind of what I'm picking up from that question.
Yeah, does anyone else come across this at all? The person has asked, like, sort of what does that mean and where are you supposed to apply for the apprenticeship if it does seem to be an internal role, but that does seem to be they're upskilling their internal staff, unfortunately. Well, perfect. So as I say, today's webinar has been recorded, so you will receive the link in an email that you can share and watch time and time again. Thank you so much for everyone that submitted questions to our live Q&A. Thank you, of course, so much to the panelists for answering, and there may be some more questions heading your way, so your job isn't done quite yet today. So thank you so much for everyone who's joined us this afternoon. We hope that you found this useful. Thank you so much for coming and have a great rest of your day.